Emotions are an internal compass, a force that Carl Jung described as the bridge between our consciousness and the depths of our being. Many times in our daily lives, we try to ignore or suppress them, thinking they are obstacles we must overcome. But Jung taught us that behind every emotion, there is a message, a call from our unconscious inviting us to reflect and grow. Think for a moment about those emotions that make you most uncomfortable, like fear, sadness, or even anger. What do you do when they appear? Most people try to avoid them or bury them deep down. But what if I told you that those same emotions are the key to rebuilding yourself from within? That within them lies the potential to transform you and reach a more authentic and powerful version of yourself? Jung said that what we repress doesn't disappear. It gets stored in our shadow. That part of us we prefer not to look at, that we hide because it doesn't fit the image we want to project to the world. But the shadow has immense power. The more we ignore it, the more it influences our lives unconsciously. It can show up as repetitive patterns, toxic relationships, or even physical problems. That's why, instead of fighting it, Jung invites us to face our shadow, to explore it, and to integrate it as an essential part of who we are. When you stop to listen to your emotions, to feel them instead of avoiding them, something happens. You start to understand that each one has a reason for being. Fear isn't there to paralyze you, but to show you where your limits are and what you need to overcome. Sadness isn't a sign of weakness, but an invitation to reflect on what you've lost and how to find new meaning. Even anger, which we often see as destructive, can be a source of energy and motivation if you channel it consciously. However, this process isn't easy. We live in a society that has conditioned us to hide our emotions, to act like everything is fine even when we feel like we're on the verge of collapse. This disconnect creates an internal fracture between who we are and what we show. And here's where Jung offers a solution. Reconnect with our unconscious. Learn to interpret the signals it sends us and use that knowledge to rebuild ourselves from within. Emotions are also a way of communicating with others. Sometimes we project onto other people what we haven't faced in ourselves. Maybe you've noticed someone irritates you for no reason, or you feel deeply drawn to someone without understanding why. Jung explained that this happens because those people reflect aspects of your own shadow, parts of you that you need to recognize and integrate. This work isn't just about looking inward, it's about transforming your relationship with the outside world. When you start to accept and understand your emotions, you also begin to see others with compassion and clarity. Relationships that were once conflictive can become opportunities to grow. Obstacles that seemed insurmountable turn into valuable lessons. And most importantly, you discover that you have the power to create a life aligned with your true self. Throughout this process, you'll learn that your emotions aren't enemies but allies. They're like an internal compass that lights up the parts of your life that need attention and care. By working with them, you're not only healing past wounds but also building a more authentic and fulfilling future. This is Carl Jung's legacy, showing us that personal transformation begins when we stop running from ourselves and start listening to what our emotions have to say. Jung said that what we deny becomes our fate. In other words, what we avoid facing keeps coming back over and over, as if part of an endless cycle. This isn't a coincidence, it's your unconscious trying to get your attention. Repressed emotions don't disappear. On the contrary, they find ways to manifest. Sometimes they show up through conflictive relationships, impulsive decisions, or even physical illnesses. Jung firmly believed that the body and mind are deeply connected. Emotions we don't express or understand build up in our bodies, creating tensions and discomforts we often can't explain. But if you start exploring those emotions, listening to them instead of ignoring them, you can free yourself from that burden and experience a profound transformation. This process begins with the courage to sit with yourself in silence, not to judge yourself, but to observe what you feel. Maybe an unexplained sadness washes over you, or a fear that seems irrational. Instead of trying to get rid of those emotions, try to understand them. Ask yourself, what are they showing me? What do I need to learn from this? Jung taught us that the answers aren't always immediate, but by asking these questions, you open a dialogue with your unconscious. The key is to be honest with yourself. Many times we tell ourselves stories to justify our emotions or to avoid facing them. We say we're fine when we're not, or that something doesn't affect us when it's actually tearing us apart inside. This kind of self-deception only prolongs our suffering. But when you have the courage to look at your emotions head on, you start to discover who you really are, beyond the masks you wear to fit into the world. It's in this process that transformation begins. Jung believed that facing your shadow, those parts of you that you've denied or repressed, is an act of liberation. When you integrate what you once rejected, you become more whole, more authentic. This doesn't mean you stop feeling negative emotions. It means you learn to work with them instead of against them. Sadness becomes a source of introspection, fear a drive to grow, and anger a creative force. At this point, something incredible happens. The people and situations that once seemed challenging or draining start to lose their power over you. You no longer react automatically, instead you respond from a place of awareness and balance. This doesn't just transform your inner life, it changes your relationships too. You realize that many of the conflictive dynamics you faced were just reflections of your own unresolved emotions. As you heal your relationship with yourself, you also heal your connections with others. When you start healing from within, the world around you begins to change too. This isn't magic or coincidence. It's a direct reflection of your inner transformation. Jung called it synchronicity, those moments when everything seems to align in an almost inexplicable way. Maybe you've experienced this, meeting someone just when you needed support, finding an unexpected opportunity at the perfect time, or feeling like the universe is guiding you towards something greater. Synchronicity doesn't happen because you're lucky. It's confirmation that you're on the right path, living in coherence with your essence. But to experience this magic, you first need to do the inner work. You need to face your fears, accept your shadow, and embrace your emotions as the teachers they are. This process isn't always easy, but every step you take brings you closer to a more authentic and meaningful life. As you do this work, you also start to attract people who are in tune with you. Maybe in the past you felt like you had to fight to keep certain relationships, as if you were forcing something that didn't flow. But when you align with your true self, the right connections simply appear. People who inspire you, support you, and motivate you to be your best self, not because they need something from you, but because they're on the same journey of growth and authenticity. This change isn't just external. Internally, you feel a peace you may never have experienced before. You're no longer fighting yourself or trying to fit into molds that aren't yours. Every decision you make, every step you take, comes from a place of clarity and purpose. And that clarity becomes your guide, showing you the way even in moments of uncertainty. However, this doesn't mean everything will be perfect or that there won't be challenges. Jung said that real growth happens in chaos, in those moments when everything seems to fall apart. But instead of fearing those moments, you learn to see them as opportunities. Every difficulty becomes an invitation to dig deeper into yourself, to discover new strengths, and to let go of what you no longer need. It's a continuous process, a journey that never ends, but with every step, you get closer to who you really are. In those moments of chaos when everything seems to crumble, that's where you truly find your strength. Jung said that meeting yourself is one of the most feared experiences, but also the most transformative. It's in those moments that you face the rawest parts of your being, the emotions you've avoided and the truths you haven't wanted to accept. But it's precisely in that confrontation where you begin to rebuild yourself from within. The key is to stop fighting what you feel. Instead of resisting pain, let yourself feel it. Instead of ignoring fear, welcome it as a chance to learn. These emotions aren't here to defeat you. They're here to transform you. Every tear you shed, every sigh you take in the midst of uncertainty is a step toward a more authentic and powerful version of yourself. As you move forward, you start to notice something extraordinary. The emotions that once paralyzed you now become fuel for your growth. Fear pushes you to explore new paths. Sadness teaches you to value what truly matters. And anger, when understood and channeled, becomes a creative force that helps you break down barriers and build a new reality. This is the power of integrating your emotions, of accepting every part of yourself instead of rejecting it. Something wonderful happens when you stop running from yourself. You find a deep sense of freedom. You're no longer trapped in repetitive patterns or relationships that drain your energy. You start making decisions from a place of clarity, based on what you truly need and want, not on what others expect of you. And this freedom doesn't just transform your inner world, it impacts how you interact with the world outside. Your relationships change radically. You stop seeking approval or validation from others because you now have a solid connection with yourself. This doesn't mean you become indifferent or distant. On the contrary, you become more authentic, more present, and more capable of creating deep, meaningful connections. You no longer fear showing who you are because you know your worth doesn't depend on how others perceive you. From here, you begin to understand something Jung emphasized constantly. The outer world is a reflection of your inner world. When you heal your emotions, when you integrate your shadow and align with your essence, the universe responds. The opportunities you've always dreamed of start to appear. The people who once seemed out of reach are now by your side, not because you chase them, but because your energy attracts them. The most incredible thing about this process is that there's no definitive end. This journey toward authenticity is ongoing, full of discoveries and lessons. But every step you take fills you with a sense of purpose and fulfillment that once seemed unattainable. As you dive deeper into this journey of transformation, you realize something crucial. The answers you've always sought outside yourself were inside you all along. Jung said that those who look outward dream, while those who look inward awaken. This awakening isn't a single event, but a continuous process, a commitment to exploring your inner world. Every emotion, every thought, every experience is a clue guiding you toward greater self-understanding. When you start looking inward, you also begin to recognize the patterns that have shaped your life. Maybe you've always chosen relationships that end in conflict or found yourself in jobs that don't fulfill you, repeating cycles of dissatisfaction. This isn't a coincidence. Jung believed that our external experiences are projections of what we haven't resolved within ourselves. Those situations reflect our shadow, the parts of us that need attention, healing, and integration. The first step to breaking these patterns is accepting your responsibility, not from guilt, but from the power you have to change. When you stop blaming others or circumstances, you reclaim control of your life. You understand that while you can't control everything that happens to you, you can control how you respond. And that response, when it comes from a place of awareness and balance, has the power to transform any situation. One of the biggest obstacles in this process is the fear of change. We cling to the familiar because we're afraid of what might come next. But Jung taught us that true growth happens when we face the unknown. It's in those moments of uncertainty that we find our greatest strengths. When you let go of what no longer serves you, you create space for something new to enter your life. And though this can feel terrifying at first, you eventually realize that the emptiness you feared isn't a space of loss, but of possibility. As you progress, you also start to notice how your relationship with time changes. You're no longer trapped in the past or anxious about the future. You begin to live in the present, the only moment where you can truly experience life. This focus not only frees you from the weight of regrets and worries, but also lets you enjoy a deeper connection with the people and experiences around you. But this journey isn't solitary. Though the transformation begins within you, it's reflected in the relationships you build with others. You start to attract people who are in tune with your new energy, people who share your vision and inspire you to keep growing. These connections aren't accidental. They're the result of your inner alignment. When you're authentic, you invite others to be the same, creating a community of support and mutual growth. The most powerful thing about this process is that it doesn't just transform your life, it impacts those around you too. Your authenticity becomes an inspiration to others, showing them that they can also break free from their limitations and live in coherence with their true selves. This transformation doesn't just change you, it creates a ripple effect in everything it touches. Jung believed that when a person finds their authenticity, they become a force for change in the world. Not because they try to impose their vision, but because their mere presence radiates coherence and purpose. The people around you start to notice the difference. You're no longer someone caught in drama or confusion, but someone who inspires trust, stability, and depth. At this point, your emotions become allies. They're no longer something you fear, avoid, or repress, but a constant source of wisdom. You learn to interpret every sensation, every intuition, as a message from your unconscious. When you feel anxiety, instead of freezing, you ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? When you feel joy, you recognize the power of living fully in the present. And when you feel sadness, you understand that you're in a healing process that will open space for something new. As you explore your inner world more, you also start to see the outer world with new eyes. Situations that once frustrated you or seemed unfair, you now observe with curiosity and compassion. You realize that every person you meet is fighting their own internal battle, and this changes how you relate to others. Instead of reacting with judgment or criticism, you offer empathy and understanding. This transformation in your relationships isn't an accident. It's the direct result of your inner work. Jung said that what we don't face within ourselves, we'll encounter as fate. This phrase captures the importance of doing this emotional work. Every time you ignore an emotion, every time you choose not to look at a part of your shadow, that energy projects into your life as an obstacle or challenge. But when you face those parts of yourself, when you accept and transform what you once rejected, you begin to take control of your destiny. You're no longer a victim of circumstances, but a conscious creator of your reality. The result of this process isn't a life free of challenges, but a life full of meaning. You learn to see every experience, even the hardest ones, as an opportunity to grow. Every relationship, every loss, every success becomes a piece of the puzzle of your evolution. And though this journey never ends, it fills you with a sense of purpose and direction that turns every day into a chance to live fully. This is where the real magic happens. Not because everything in your life is perfect, but because you found an inner peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This peace isn't passivity. It's a state of trust in yourself, in your process, and in the universe. You know that no matter what happens, you have the tools to face it, learn from it, and move forward. When you reach this state of inner connection, everything you do starts to have a deeper purpose. Your decisions are no longer driven by fear or insecurity, but by the clarity of who you are and what you truly want in life. This doesn't mean the path is always easy, but you face it with an inner strength you didn't have before. You become the architect of your destiny, shaping it from a place of authenticity and power. Something Jung emphasized was that it's not about eliminating pain or difficulties from life, but about learning to navigate through them with awareness. Difficult emotions, the ones that once seemed uncontrollable, now become signals showing you the way. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of your circumstances, you recognize that every challenge is an opportunity to deepen your self-knowledge and expand your resilience. Relationships that once felt draining or frustrating now become mirrors reflecting parts of yourself that still need healing. Jung said that what bothers us most about others is often a reflection of what we haven't resolved within ourselves. This understanding completely changes the dynamic of your interactions. Instead of reacting impulsively, you take a moment to reflect and ask, what is this person teaching me? What part of me needs attention? This doesn't mean you tolerate toxic relationships or situations that drain your energy. On the contrary, one of the most powerful lessons you learn on this path is the value of setting boundaries. Not as an act of rejection, but as an act of self-love. When you protect your energy, you're telling your unconscious in the world that you value yourself, that you recognize your own power, and that you choose to surround yourself with people and experiences that align with you. The result of this inner work shows up in every aspect of your life. Your relationships become deeper and more authentic. Your goals align with your deepest values, and your day-to-day life fills with a sense of purpose that once seemed out of reach. Even small moments, like a conversation or a walk outdoors, feel more meaningful because you experience them from a place of presence and gratitude. At this point, you start to understand what Jung meant by living a full life. It's not about piling up achievements or seeking approval from others, but about connecting with your essence, finding that balance between your inner and outer worlds. This fullness doesn't happen overnight, but every small step you take toward it transforms your life in a way that's hard to put into words. But the journey doesn't end here. There's always more to discover, more to learn, more to integrate. This is the beauty of working with your emotions and your unconscious. Every day becomes a new opportunity to grow, to heal, and to live in coherence with your true self. When you reach this level of connection with yourself, you realize that the true transformation isn't about changing the outer world, but about changing your relationship with it. Jung taught us that by reconnecting with our emotions, integrating our shadow, and living in coherence with our essence, we open the door to a life full of purpose and authenticity. But this isn't a final destination. It's a continuous path of exploration and growth. The impact of this transformation doesn't just benefit you, it touches the people around you too. By living in tune with yourself, you become an inspiration to those searching for their own truth. Your actions, your words, and even your presence start to radiate an energy that invites others to look inward, to question, and to transform. This effect is powerful because, as Jung said, those who look inward awaken. When you awaken, you don't just free yourself, you also contribute to positive change in the world. Now it's your turn. Everything you've heard here has no value if you don't apply it. Think of this moment as an opportunity to start fresh, to look at your emotions with new eyes, and to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. What could change in your life if you dared to take this first step? You don't need to have all the answers, just the courage to begin. I want to invite you to join this conversation, to be part of a community where we explore this journey toward a more authentic and meaningful life together. Let me know in the comments what part of this message resonated with you, what emotions you feel you need to explore, or what decisions you're ready to make to align with your essence. Your story could be the spark that inspires others to start their own transformation. If this message touched something inside you, share it. By doing so, you help more people discover this knowledge and join this path of self-discovery and growth. Transformation isn't something we do alone. It's something we create together as a community. Subscribe if you haven't already, turn on the bell, and join me on this journey. Every time you engage with this content, you help it reach further, touching lives you might not even imagine. Remember always, the answers you seek aren't outside you. They're within. This is your moment to look inward, to discover the richness you already carry inside, and to let yourself live from a place of authenticity and fullness. Thank you for being here, for being part of this family, and for taking that first step toward a transformed life. See you in the next video. The change starts with you.